You wake before the sun has fully risen. There is no sudden alarm, only the slow, creeping awareness that the night's watch is nearing its end. The air in your small room feels cool against your skin, carrying the faint, mingled scents of banked wood smoke and dried straw. These smells are simply part of the day's breath, a testament to how life has been maintained here through generations, a gentle reminder of warmth that will be necessary later. You do not move quickly. There is no reason for haste in this hour. You stretch slowly beneath your coarse blanket, feeling the give and slight ache in muscles unused to sudden movement. The weight of sleep lifts gradually from your limbs, replaced by a kind of quiet alertness. Every creak of the wooden floorboards underfoot seems amplified in the hush, sounding like the whisper of time itself. The light entering through the narrow shutters is not yet visible as sun, but as a diffused, watery gray. It possesses an even quality, spreading over the earthen floor and barely illuminating the corners of your small space. You notice how this muted shade softens the edges of all things, blurring the harsh lines between objects. The pottery bowl near the hearth, the woven basket by the wall, the worn edge of the wooden chest at your feet. You slide your bare feet onto the packed dirt floor. The coolness is immediate and grounding, a solid contrast to the relative warmth held within your bedding. You pause, breathing deeply, taking in the very specific quality of the pre-dawn air. It is clean, carrying the cold residue of dew, mingled with that steady, sweet scent of smoke from the communal ovens nearby. Every object here seems coated in a layer of time. Nothing shines harshly or brightly. The gray light respects the patina of the wood, allowing you to observe the deep grain lines and the minor nicks and scratches left by years of ordinary use. These scars on the structure feel less like flaws and more like quiet maps of survival. You rise from your mat slowly, moving with a consideration for gravity that seems instinctual. Your movements are economical, unhurried. The morning routine dictates this slow pace. To rush in the gray light would be wrong, discordant with the soft turning of the earth outside. A sound begins to filter in from beyond your dwelling. It is not loud, but a rhythmic series of muted thuds, the careful rolling or dragging of something heavy across wood. Perhaps it is a neighbor beginning their preparation for the day. You do not turn fully to look, merely listening, allowing the rhythm to confirm that life has begun its quiet cycle outside these thick walls. You proceed into the small area where water skins are kept. The leather of the skins feels dry and taut beneath your fingertips. They must be gathered and checked, a simple, physical task that connects you immediately to the necessities of communal life. You test the tightness of the knots, ensuring they will hold the weight needed for the journey ahead. The act of gathering these objects, the fresh water, the empty vessels awaiting filling, is inherently ritualistic. It marks the beginning of preparation, a mindful acknowledgement that physical effort and necessary care precede any pleasure. You are preparing not just water, but an experience. You notice details on the earthenware jugs, the residue rings left by previous fillings, the subtle pitting near the lip where hands have repeatedly poured. These markings tell silent stories of many similar mornings, thousands of individual preparations leading to this exact moment. The objects themselves hold a continuity that is deeply comforting in its predictability. Stepping outside the immediate confines of your room and into the main passage of your dwelling, you encounter the preliminary materials for washing. Simple bundles of herbs, rosemary, chamomile, perhaps some wild mint, are tied neatly together. Their dried leaves possess a dusty, papery smell that carries slightly in the cool air, an earthy fragrance distinct from smoke. You carefully touch these gathered botanicals, feeling their brittle texture. They are destined for steeping, to yield scent and healing properties when combined with the heat of the bathhouse. The preparation itself seems almost meditative, the act of confirming what is needed, seeing what remains, and knowing what must be used. The cool air begins to draw around you as you move further out into the alleyway between your house and that of your neighbor. You take a moment simply to observe the passage of light on the uneven stone paving beneath your feet. Even in this early gray, the stones possess a depth and variety of color, grays mixed with faint patches of bruised blue or ochre yellow where moss might cling. You consider the transition from the private stillness of your home to the public threshold. The world is still holding its breath, gathered into a state of potential energy. You are one of the first souls moving through this delicate moment, and that awareness imparts a quiet gravity to every movement you make. The passage toward the edge of the village suggests that just beyond the current haze, the main flow of morning life awaits. You feel the gentle pull of anticipation, not dramatic excitement, but the steady, murmuring promise of community activity about to begin. This slow walk is a grounding exercise, preparing your body and mind for the sensory richness awaiting you at the bathhouse gates. You pause by a stack of cut firewood. The wood is dry, smelling intensely of sap and cured forest. It speaks of labor in distant seasons. You run your hand along the rough texture of a thick log end. It feels solid, reliable, a perfect counterpoint to the ephemeral nature of dawn light filtering through the mist. This careful accumulation of objects, this methodical waking up within the rhythm of routine, it is a kind of small magic in itself. It suggests that life, even before the sun reveals its power, operates on ancient and dependable mechanisms. The preparation of water, the bundling of smoke-borne herbs, the slow passage across cool stone. You are drawn onward by an almost irresistible pull toward the clustered buildings of the village center. The light remains muted, but it feels thicker now, carrying the hint of impending warmth, a subtle counterpoint to the chill in your bones. You adjust your pace to match the gentle rhythm established by those who moved before you. A slow, deliberate parade into the emerging day. The initial sounds of the morning have begun to soften, pulling you away from the cool quiet of your dwelling. You know that today is a day for preparation, an undertaking that requires methodical attention and calm hands. The air still holds that crisp dampness of the early season, carrying faint whispers of wood smoke and the nearby stream. Your task begins with gathering simple things, skins of water and linens of good quality. These are not items used lightly. They represent a commitment to routine, a promise to yourself and your community. You walk slowly toward the place where the skins are kept, noting the subtle shifting texture of the cobbled path beneath your bare feet. The stones have absorbed the chill night air, feeling cool and yielding against your soles. You bend slightly, examining the stitching on the largest skin, running your fingertips over the hardened leather. There is a pattern to the wear here, small patches where hands have rubbed the hide for years. Each crease speaks of water carried, of countless routines endured. You carry the skins now, their weight balanced carefully against the natural rhythm of your gait. You approach the area reserved for soap-making preparation. The work involves simple ingredients, the potash gathered from ash, combined with rendered animal fat and fragrant wild herbs. You examine the drying bundles of lavender and rosemary. The scents are muted in the cool air, a gentle, earthy sweetness that promises cleansing. These preparations require patience. You kneel down slightly, sorting through handfuls of dried thistle blooms and roots. Their colors, deep purples and dusky greens, are intensified by the morning light, even this weak, early glow. It is necessary to observe these natural components with care, understanding how each part contributes to the eventual saponification process. The mixing itself is an act of measured movement. You draw out a simple wooden trough used for dissolving the lye mixture. The liquid, alkaline in nature, does not smell strongly, but carries a sharp, clean mineral note that reminds you of damp earth after a spring rain. You use your hands, scraping and stirring the base materials with practiced care, the weight of the wood familiar and comforting. This physical labor is soothing because it demands focus. There is no room for frantic thoughts when your attention is fixed on ensuring the consistency of the mixture. You notice the way the pale sunlight catches the fine dust motes suspended above the trough, dancing momentarily before settling back into the quiet stillness. The entire process unfolds slowly, a gentle ballet of medieval domestic craftsmanship. Having prepared the soap base, you turn your attention to the linens. These are not merely clean cloth. They are starched, boiled white cottons and sturdy wool wraps meant to endure the steam and the repeated handling. You sort through baskets of folded materials, counting them silently as you work. The texture is paramount. The difference between a coarsely woven wrapping cloth and the fine linen destined for face washing must be evident to the touch. A finger traces the weave of a thick woolen towel. It feels substantial, designed to withstand vigorous use and long washes. You fold each piece methodically, stacking them in neat, predictable pyramids. This careful ordering imparts a deep sense of readiness, an organized anticipation that calms the nervous energy accumulated during sleepless hours. This preparation is more than merely gathering objects for the bathhouse ritual. It is an anchoring process. It roots you to the present day and to the reliable rhythms of your life. By preparing these goods, the water, the soap, the cloths, you are participating in a continuous, communal craft that has sustained this village for generations. You feel the accumulated knowledge embedded within the simple motions. The measuring of ingredients, the folding of linen, the careful carrying of water. It is wisdom expressed through muscle memory. After settling the materials and securing the tools, you realize your journey begins. The preparations are complete, the necessary items gathered and arranged for ease of transport. You look out over the small courtyard area where the work took place. Everything seems washed clean by the dew and the early morning chill. A slow contemplation washes over you. This structured preparation ensures that when the actual ritual of bathing arrives later, every moment can be dedicated solely to the cleansing experience itself, nothing distracting or disorganized. You exit into the village paths once more. The transition from the contained workspace back into the public thoroughfare feels like stepping through a veil. The world outside is still waking up, stretching slowly in the cool morning light. You walk with an altered perception. Everything seems sharper, imbued with purpose because you are moving toward a defined goal. Your attention gravitates to the details of the street itself. The mortar stains on the lowest course of stone, the faint residue of spent embers near a doorway, the slight, uneven slope of the pathway that suggests years of careful foot traffic. Each step becomes an observation. As you proceed, you notice other villagers stirring in their respective routines. They move with a similar, unhurried determination. Some carry baskets brimming with cuttings from the garden. Others sweep dust and grit from thresholds. There is no haste visible on any face or limb. Their movements are governed by an internal clock, synchronized perhaps by the coming day's central ritual. You observe the interaction between neighbors. A quick nod passed across the way, a murmured greeting shared while carrying goods. These moments feel deeply interconnected, bound together by necessity and habit. The air changes subtly as you move through different micro-environments. The smell of baked bread drifts out from a low oven entrance. It competes sweetly with the deeper, heavier scent of damp livestock stalls situated down the alleyway. The contrast is rich and complex. Life smells of fermentation, smoke, fresh earth, and human activity. You continue to walk, allowing your senses to take in this tapestry of village existence. Your focus remains on maintaining a quiet composure, moving through these waking rhythms with the calm dignity that preparation requires. You are walking towards the communal bathhouse now. Though you have not seen its distinctive facade yet, the feeling of approach is palpable, a subtle shift in the ambient temperature and soundscape. The closer you get, the more the natural village sounds begin to thin out, replaced by a slightly muffled quality, as if an invisible barrier of expectation awaits. You slow your pace further, allowing yourself to absorb the transitional space between the ordinary life on these narrow streets and the specialized space awaiting your body and mind. It is a graceful slowing down of motion that prepares you for profound rest. The steady, measured rhythm of your own footsteps becomes a guiding beat. You consider how essential this slow preparation was. To simply arrive at the bathhouse without having meticulously prepared one's materials would disrupt the flow, making the eventual ritual feel jarring rather than seamless. The preparation is thus inextricably linked to the experience itself. It is part of the cleansing process, an outer rinse for the mind before the inner soak. You find yourself standing near the edge of the main square or thoroughfare leading directly to the communal buildings. Ahead, you can finally discern the structure, perhaps a building noticeably built with more robust, steaming materials than the adjacent dwellings. The approach here is marked by a slight increase in warmth and a very subtle change in the atmospheric pressure. You pause for just a moment, inhaling deeply. It carries a complex signature of anticipation, dust mixed with damp stone, overlaid with that distinct herbal scent you so carefully prepared, all leading toward the heat that promises to wash away more than just grime. The gentle act of gathering your necessary items, folding them neatly, and carrying them through the awakening village served not as tedious chore work, but as a quiet pilgrimage. Each folded cloth, every measured handful of herb, was a step in the preparation for letting go. You adjust the weight on your shoulder with practiced ease, feeling fully equipped, grounded, and ready to submit yourself to the profound, enveloping comfort awaiting you within those steamed walls. You walk through the village streets, leaving behind the quiet routine of your own dwelling. The air here feels different than it did just moments before. It carries a new blend of scents that suggests life is beginning to stir. It is not yet the bright smell of the sun fully risen, but rather a complex perfume of damp earth warmed by last night's chill, mixing with the sweet, yeasty promise drifting from the baker's shop down the lane. You notice how this combination of smells acts like an olfactory map, showing you exactly where life is quietly congregating before the noise and bustle arrive. The cobbled path beneath your feet feels smooth, worn by centuries of footsteps. Each stone has a character etched into its surface, a slight dip here, a faint polish there, testifying to countless pairs of shoes that have trod this way before you. You shift your weight from one foot to the next, feeling the cool give and take of the paving beneath your simple leather soles. It is not merely walking. It is an engagement with history underfoot. The low angle of the morning light catches the wetness in some places, making the stones gleam dully, like scattered coins. You pass by a house whose wooden beams are darkened and warped by age, smelling faintly of banked smoke and beeswax polish. You look up at the eaves, where small clumps of moss have begun to colonize the wood, giving it a soft, muted green patina against the gray mortar. It is in these unnoticed details, the particular way sunlight hits the edge of a chipped window frame, or the delicate curve of an old wooden shutter, that you find a strange, profound sense of calm. The houses themselves seem to sigh with accumulated memory. A few neighbors are emerging now, moving with that peculiar gentle pace of those who know they have all day, but haven't yet felt its press upon them. They move side by side in muted silence, greeting each other with nods and brief murmurs that hardly break the overall quietude of the hour. You observe their routines. One woman carefully hoisting a bucket onto her shoulder, another man leaning against a gatepost, patiently waiting. Their movements are economical, practiced. They exist within the rhythm of necessity, moving like cogs in a slow-turning machine. The smells deepen as you progress further into the village center. Near a small market square fountain, you catch the sharp, mineral tang of cold water mixing with the fainter, grounding scent of hay stacked nearby for feeding beasts. The coolness emanating from the stone basin contrasts sharply with the slight warmth radiating from your own skin and garments, creating a subtle temperature contrast that is deeply comforting. You continue onward toward the expected route to the bathhouse, and as you walk, your mind begins to settle into the steady rhythm of the day. You find yourself focusing on simple counts, counting the distinct types of leaf clinging to an overhanging branch, observing the pattern in a patch of dirt near a curbstone. These small acts of concentration anchor you firmly to the moment, drawing your attention away from any thoughts about tomorrow or yesterday. The passage of light continues to unfold like a slow piece of fabric. Initially, it was diffused and milky, struggling to break through the remaining atmospheric haze. Now, slivers of brighter yellow begin to cut across the sky, illuminating dust motes that dance briefly in the air before settling back down. These airborne specks seem to carry the village's quiet breath, the settled exhalations of a community slowly waking up. You notice an artisan's workshop entrance. There are piles of stacked kindling wood outside, neatly cross-hatched and ready for the day's fires. The wood smells dry and sharp against the dampness of the morning air. The labor involved in gathering such fuel is a profound example of organized community life, where every small act contributes to the collective heat and sustenance. It makes you pause momentarily, observing the deliberate placement of each stack, noting the sheer effort required for such an orderly display. Your steps slow slightly as you approach the final stretch of the path leading toward the Bathhouse district. The architecture here changes subtly. The buildings might be grander, or perhaps more purely functional, built specifically to manage heat and moisture. There is a specific quality to the air near these places, a subtle background hum that suggests steam and boiling water, even if you cannot yet see it. The scent profile shifts once more. The earthy smells give way, incorporating elements of smoke not just from hearth fires, but perhaps from burning herbs or medicinal poultices. This new aroma is rich and complex, signaling a different kind of ritual than simply passing through the day, preparation for cleansing. You draw in a deep breath, letting the varied scents fill your lungs, the faint sweetness of yeast mixed now with the sharp, herbal promise of steam. It grounds you deeper still into the purpose of your walk. You pass by empty barrels or discarded vessels used to transport water, their wooden bodies bearing streaks of damp patina and faded pigments. These objects are silent witnesses, markers of countless journeys undertaken in search of cleanliness and comfort. You trace the grain pattern on a discarded oaken barrel with your eyes, considering its weight, its purpose, and its eventual return to nothingness, only to be replaced by another vessel carrying fresh water. The rhythm of walking begins to match an internal tempo, steady, unhurried, deeply measured. The journey itself becomes the ritual preparation. By observing the ordinary life around you, the stacked goods, the passing neighbor, the shifting quality of light on stone, You are gathering not just physical objects, but a mental stillness. The very act of traversing this space in the pre-dawn quiet forces an observational clarity upon your mind. Everything seems sharper, more defined, because the usual clamor that distracts the senses has yet to arrive. You realize how reliant life is on these transitional hours. It is when the boundaries between sleep and wakefulness are thinnest, allowing for a kind of suspended contemplation. You near the visible markers of the bathhouse itself, a slight widening of the street, perhaps more robust stonework, or maybe just a change in the ambient temperature that hints at internal heat. The sounds also start to coalesce, moving beyond simple human greetings. You hear the distant creak of heavy wooden doors being opened, and the muffled, rhythmic slap of sandals on stone, suggesting those who are already preparing for their own immersion. The accumulated quietude you have gathered over this walk serves as a deep ballast. It prepares your body not just physically, but mentally, for the forthcoming heat and steam. You are arriving at a place meant to be transformative, and the slow passage through these everyday village moments has already initiated that change within you, smoothing out the rough edges of sleep-weary existence into quiet expectation. You walk toward the visible steam, the scent of it growing stronger with every measured step. The cool, damp air of the village street suddenly gives way to a palpable warmth that touches your skin like a warm, humid breath. It does not wash over you aggressively, but rather envelops you gently, settling into the clothes and pores until you are cocooned within its hazy embrace. The scent here is complex, far richer than anything in the quiet streets outside. There is the unmistakable deep steam of boiling water mixed with a multitude of organic smells, crushed leaves, earthy roots, and what might be soap rendered from fat and potash. Beneath these stronger notes lie subtler aromas, the clean musk of many bodies gathered together, mixed with wood smoke that seems to have been burned into the very stone walls. It is 1,000 scents breathing out at once, creating an atmosphere that feels ancient and deeply restorative. You lift your hand and trail your fingers through the rising mist. The steam feels almost solid, like liquid silk against your skin. You realize how utterly different this space is from the outside world. Outside, the air was sharp with damp earth and yeast. Here, the air is heavy and soothing, carrying the heat not just as temperature, but as a tangible feeling of deep relaxation. The architecture of the bathhouse surrounds you completely. The walls appear to be rough-hewn stone, darkened by time and by constant cycles of intense humidity. You observe how the moisture beads on the edges of the flagstones where your feet rest, small crystalline droplets catching the faint light that struggles to penetrate the steam. This gathering of water speaks of the sheer thermal power contained within this simple, sturdy structure. A bench waits for you just inside the main chamber. It is made of dark timber, perhaps soaked repeatedly by bathers before you. You approach it slowly, testing its firmness beneath your palm. The wood retains a warmth that is pleasant and deep, contrasting with the slight chill still lingering in your outer layers. Everything here speaks of sustained heat, of careful maintenance and habitual use. You sit down, letting the steam embrace your shoulders first. It settles around you like a heavy, comfortable blanket. You notice small details, a corner where steam has condensed so thoroughly it has blackened the stone grout, faint streaks of mineral deposits staining the tiles high up on the walls, testifying to years of hot water running through unseen pipes and channels. There is no urgency here, nowhere. The pace is dictated by the needs of your breath, by the rhythm of the steam condensing around you. You let out a slow breath, observing how easily the warm air draws the moisture from your lungs, making each inhalation feel both deep and satisfying. It is a process that forces your consciousness to slow down, pulling all unnecessary thought into a quiet holding pattern. The warmth begins to sink through your outer layers, working slowly inward. You notice the gradual warming of the muscles in your legs, the subtle shift from exterior cold to internal heat. This transition is profound. It feels less like a change in temperature and more like an unfolding state of being. You remember that this gathering place exists solely for this ritual, to allow the physical body to surrender its tension within a contained, heated environment. Further within the steaming space, you glimpse the large soaking tubs themselves. They are filled with water already, the surface barely rippling beneath a thin layer of oil or natural cleansing agents. The depth of the steam makes it difficult to see the bottom clearly, yet you feel its inviting warmth through the hazy air. You do not rush toward them. Instead, you simply absorb the atmosphere, letting your senses adjust to this unique blend of heat and aroma. The scent profile shifts subtly as you move closer to the tubs. The herbal notes become more dominant, perhaps scented cedar mixed with pungent rosemary or wild chamomile, ingredients intended both for fragrance and for reputed medicinal virtues. These smells are not simply perfumes. They carry an association with cleansing and healing. You take a moment to watch the way the steam interacts with the overhead light source. It catches in undulating waves, making the air itself appear visible, a soft, glowing curtain that filters out the harsh edges of the world outside. Everything is rendered slightly mysterious, softened by humidity. The warmth begins to work on your mind as well. The initial alertness required for the walk and preparation starts to dissipate, replaced by a languid state of contentment. Your shoulders feel marginally heavier, less burdened than they did in the morning light. This heaviness is not fatigue, but the welcome weight of relaxation setting into place. You gather the necessary small items, perhaps a rough towel or a bowl for soaking feet, and movements are performed with a slow economy, mindful of the steam that clings to everything. The careful handling of these objects becomes part of the grounding process, an anchoring of your consciousness to the simple reality of the moment's task. The profound sense of time slowing down is palpable here. Minutes stretch out, filled not with event, but with sensation. You are taught, instinctively, that in this space there is no need for haste, and therefore none for anxiety. All that matters is the present weight of the steam on your skin, the faint echoing sound of running water, and the pervasive, comforting warmth. You finally step closer to the edge of one of the great soaking tubs. The heat emanating from the filled basin feels immensely inviting. You dip a tentative foot into the water. It meets the sole of your foot with an immediate, deep warmth that spreads quickly up your ankle. A small sound escapes you, a quiet sigh, as the contrast between your outer skin temperature and the infused body heat signals the profound welcome of the bath. The steam continues its gentle dance around you, keeping everything in a constant state of soothing thermal saturation. It is a world apart, suspended between the crisp awakening of day and the slow comfort of rest. You are submerged into not just water, but history itself. A routine passed down through generations who understood that cleansing was not merely about removing dirt, but about renewing the spirit. You settle deeper into the hot water, feeling the initial shock of the steam fade away into a rich warmth that settles around your skin. The water level rises gently against your chest, supporting you in an effortless suspension. You allow your limbs to sink completely, letting the tension from the morning's gathering ease out through your joints and muscles. It is not just heat, it is weightlessness, a rare gift on a working day. Your breath deepens automatically, following the natural rhythm established by the comforting warmth. The air above you is thick with scent. It is a complex tapestry woven from many sources. The sweet, earthy tang of crushed medicinal herbs placed near the steam vents, the sharper, mineral smell of the stone baths themselves, and beneath those are the faint, warm undertones of many human bodies, each story passing through this vessel, contributing their unique essence to the communal blend. You close your eyes for a long moment, letting the sense define an inner quietude, isolating yourself within the enveloping heat. Slowly, you lift your head slightly. The light filtering down into the bathhouse seems muted and diffused by the sheer volume of water vapor. It is not the sharp clarity of midday sunshine, but something softer, more forgiving, a smoky luminosity that plays across the moist stone walls above you. You notice how the steam catches this low light, making the air itself seem tangible, almost like a breathable silk curtain. Across the pool, or perhaps in an adjoining bathing area, there are sounds that do not demand attention but merely exist. The soft shh of water lapping against stone edges, the murmur of voices pitched just above the level of conversation, easily absorbed by the steam, the faint, rhythmic splash as someone shifts position with a languid stretch. These background noises form a soothing sonic blanket, assuring you that life continues in its steady, predictable cycle. You begin to observe the surface of the water near your hands. The light hits it and breaks into dancing, fragmented patterns, a mesmerizing kaleidoscope of shifting blues and grays across the deeper bathwater. It reminds you of looking down at a forest canopy on a slightly misty day, where individual leaves are distinct yet part of one vast, moving whole. You watch these subtle refractions for several long minutes, concentrating only on their movement, allowing your mind to slow alongside the water's gentle surface tension. The stone supporting the bath itself feels solid and ancient beneath you, holding this contained warmth across centuries of similar soaks. It is a structure built not for glamour or haste, but purely for endurance. You consider how many generations have sunk into this exact spot, finding temporary peace in its reliable embrace. This realization brings with it a quiet understanding of time, that the passage of seasons and lives flows through fixed points, like a river carving a path around enduring rock. There is no need to hurry. The purpose of being here is simply to exist within this thermal cradle. Your muscles adjust to the sustained warmth. You might gently stretch an ankle or rotate your wrist, observing how the water resists and supports with equal measure. The simple mechanics of movement become meditative exercises. You feel the pull in your calf muscles giving way entirely to the buoyant support. This momentary reprieve from effort is a profound luxury. You shift your focus back to the periphery. Along the edges where you sit, the bathwater collects little pools of runoff. Each pool holds something differently. A smudge of soap lather that catches the light, an emerald fleck of wet moss growing near the tiled base, or simply the deep, undisturbed sapphire hue reflecting the overhead steam. The medicinal nature of this water and environment is undeniable. The heavy presence of boiled-down herbs, perhaps rosemary for memory, or lavender for calm, works subtly through your pores, carrying scents that are both wild and civilized at once. It is a deliberate confrontation with natural pharmacy. Everything useful here smells intensely organic. Allowing the warmth to seep into your bones, you let your mind drift away from immediate concerns. You think about the simple architecture of the life you lead, the sturdy wooden beams over your head, the thick plaster walls that keep out the winter chill. These elements are all connected by a reliance on predictable rhythms. Water needs heating, wood needs splitting, and bodies need cleansing at the regular turn of the cycle. The bathhouse is simply one necessary nexus point in that network. You might think about the concept of reset, not a dramatic change, but a gentle recalibration. A washing clean not just of grime, but perhaps of the minor irritations accumulated throughout the waking day, the small arguments overheard, the minor frustrations with chores, the dust of unnecessary worries. The hot water acts as both a physical and metaphorical solvent. You let your eyelids grow heavy again, drifting toward that peaceful half-sleep between wakefulness and dream. Your breathing becomes extremely shallow, almost silent in comparison to the earlier efforts of gathering and walking. You are wrapped in a kind of communal heat, a shared vulnerability under steaming stone arches. The sensation is one of being perfectly nested, warmed from without, relaxed from within. The world continues outside this steaming sanctuary. The village waits for the sunlight to climb higher. The markets will soon stir with noise and bargaining cries. But here, suspended in scented warmth, there is only the water, the stone, and the slow, measured pulse of your own recovery. You remain still, letting the soak deepen its restorative power, feeling every little muscle fiber soften beneath the continuous caress of the heat. The warmth of the bathhouse lingers on your skin, a comforting residue that does not fade quickly. You lift your arms slowly, feeling the water slide off the newly cleansed layers of soap and scented oils. The air here, though still steaming, seems to have shifted its character. It no longer carries the deep heat of submersion, but something gentler, more breathable. A mix of damp wood smoke from a corner brazier and the faint, dry scent of rosemary used for rinsing. You find yourself standing in a small pool area near the edge of the main bathing room, allowing gravity to draw the last vestiges of water down your legs. You reach out, not knowing what you are searching for, simply extending your hand into the coolish runoff. The stone beneath your toes is smooth and perpetually damp from countless feet before yours. You notice a small pile of scraps near where you stand, discarded linens or perhaps soft pieces of pumice stone used for rough scrubbing. You pick up one such scrap. It is faintly abrasive, smelling mineral-rich and dry in the humid air. This simple object reminds you of the effort involved. That mere smoothness required friction, time, and intention. The steam feels different now, less overwhelming and more like a veil drawn over reality. It catches the weak shafts of light filtering through high, narrow slits in the curved stone ceiling. You watch how those beams penetrate the haze, creating shifting columns of gold dust suspended midair. The effect is strangely cathedral-like, despite the humble utilitarian architecture of a communal washing space. You take a deep breath, intentionally slow and measured. The scent profile changes slightly with each inhalation. First, the sharp sweetness of laurel leaves, then the musky undercurrent of many bodies in shared steam. Finally, an unexpected, clean note of baking bread that seems to emanate from the very stone itself. A woman nearby is carefully rinsing her hair beneath a low spout. Her movements are unhurried, almost choreographed by the water's rhythm. You observe the way her dark hair catches the misty light as it streams down her shoulders, momentarily darkened by wetness. This casual act of personal upkeep becomes an unintentional lesson in the pace of life, a reminder that necessity does not preclude graceful slowness. Your fingers drift over your arm, feeling the subtle ridges and valleys left behind by yesterday's grime now gently scrubbed clean. The soap itself is natural, made from lye derived from wood ash mixed with local fats and fragrant herbs like lavender or thyme. You recall how its lather was dense, almost creamy, trapping the steam scent around your skin. The ritual of washing, you realize, extends far beyond mere physical cleanliness. It is a kind of spiritual exfoliation. The scrubbing removes not just dirt, but perhaps the residue of the day's minor anxieties and forgotten obligations. Each pass of the scrub cloth feels like an erasure, allowing for a blank slate of skin. You lean back slightly against the warm stone wall. The porous nature of the structure absorbs temperature slowly. When you press your hand flat against it, the coolness is immediately met by a deeper warmth rising from within the rock itself, a geological comfort that seems timeless and unchanging. Across the room, others are beginning to gather their things. Water skins are being filled with clean, rinse water. Rough wooden basins are set out. The sounds of clanking stone and soft splashing become less like noise and more like the quiet scoring of a steady rhythm, the background music of collective routine. You look down at your own hands, noticing how visible the lines are now that they are washed. They tell stories in deep folds, the crease from kneading dough, the mark from handling rough wool, the slight roughness from years of working wood. These marks are part of who you are, and the cleansing ritual honors them rather than erasing them. The weight of your body feels unexpectedly light. Every muscle seems softened by the heat and the gentle massage of the washing process. There is a profound quiet that settles over you, despite the presence of other people. It is the shared understanding that everyone here is undergoing a similar recalibration, preparing to shed what was merely necessary for existence. The concept of cleanse itself feels cyclical here. You are cleansing not just the body, but perhaps also the spirit in preparation for whatever the next cycle of labor or thought will bring. The bathhouse is not an end point. It is a deep pause point within the long current of daily life. As you begin to move toward the rinsing basins, your pace remains languid. You are moving through memory, the feeling of water hitting hot skin, the specific blend of scents that mark this place only, and the profound satisfaction of physical restoration. The very act of stepping out of the main pool area forces a shift in focus from passive soaking to active ritualizing. Everything here is built for endurance. The heavy stone walls suggest centuries of steaming cycles. The basins are worn by generations of careful hands. Even the natural soap blocks seem imbued with the slow resilience of local plant life. You recognize that your own existence, too, must draw upon similar sources: routine, community support, and persistent care. You take a few last moments simply standing, allowing the steam to gently lift the hair from your forehead, feeling the warmth against the cooling air on the edges of your skin. The sensation is one of beautiful paradox, simultaneous heat and relief, closeness and individual sanctuary. You are prepared for what comes next. The journey back, the slow gathering strength in the fresh daylight, carrying this internal quietude with you through the remainder of the day. You emerge from the deepest warmth of the steam chamber, moving slowly toward the cool air that brushes against your freshly cleansed skin. The transition is immediate. The moist heat gives way to a breathable dampness, making you pause for just a moment on the threshold. You take in the visual shift, the intense golden haze within the washroom contrasted with the muted gray-blue light filtering through the adjacent courtyard opening. Everything seems softened by steam's lingering residue. There is a gentle tickling sensation where your exposed skin meets the cooler air, reminding you of your body's return to the outside rhythm. You reach for one of the woven towels provided, noting the rough texture and absorbent weight of the linen. It feels vastly different from the smooth bathcloth worn inside the pool. As you begin the methodical task of drying, paying careful attention to joints and folds of skin, your senses are gently brought back into full awareness. You notice the lingering complex aromas, the sharp, clean scent of rosemary mixed with lye soap residue, overlaid by a faint, sweet musk that belongs entirely to humanity passing through this space. It is a mingling of life, sweat, and purifying herbs. The communal nature of the bathhouse means you are not alone in this process. Several other people move around you, neighbors, perhaps merchants or craftsmen who also sought respite from their day's labors. They work quietly, using similar linens, their movements measured and unhurried. You observe how their hands grasp at towels, the careful, rhythmic pressing motion that speaks of a deep familiarity with this ritual. Each person seems absorbed in the task at hand, yet existing within a shared space of quiet endurance. This is not merely washing. It feels like an acknowledgement of one's place within the larger weave of village life. As you pull on the simple tunic and rough woolen hose provided for leaving the baths, the weight of the fabric feels anchoring. It anchors you in the immediate moment, tethering your thoughts to the physical sensation of covering up. The air here begins to carry a new scent, less purely herbal, more mixed with the smell of damp wood floors being swept clean and cooling stone that slowly accepts the residual warmth from the steam. This shift in atmosphere signals the transition from the sacred, intensely personal act of washing to the necessary reconnection with the outside world. You find yourself moving toward what seems like a small gathering area, a corner away from the main flow of people, a chatting corner, perhaps designed by necessity and habit. You settle down onto a low wooden bench, or perhaps near a carved stone ledge that overlooks a semi-sheltered passage. Here, the noise level drops slightly, becoming a soft murmur rather than a discernible roar of activity. It is the background hum of contented people winding down their cleansing routine. You find yourself observing the details around this corner. The stone here has different wear patterns than those in the main bathing area. Moss might cling to one side, while bright streaks of mineral runoff highlight another. These patches tell a silent story of decades of passing water and human traffic. You lean slightly against the cool stone wall, allowing your back to feel supported by its solid, unchanging presence. Slowly, you become aware of others taking advantage of this lull in intense activity. 2 or 3 women might be sitting nearby, hands folded in their laps, watching the few last bathers emerge from the steaming chambers behind them. They are not speaking loudly. Rather, they exchange small, knowing glances and little gestures that convey more than any spoken word would. It is here that the gentle sharing of news begins. It starts with a simple observation, the difficulty getting the early delivery of firewood, or perhaps a comment on how unexpectedly cool the damp earth feels today. The conversations are not boisterous accounts of drama. They are low-toned murmurs, fragments of village life woven together and exchanged like passing seeds. You listen to the rhythm of these exchanges, the dip in pitch when someone shares gossip about an overly zealous priest, or the soft agreement indicated by a shared breath. These conversations feel integral to the communal act itself. The bathhouse provides both physical purification and social nourishment. To clean the body is one thing. To exchange stories that keep memory alive and confirm mutual existence is another entirely. The rhythm of conversation becomes cyclical. A point is raised. It elicits a brief counterargument or anecdote, and then it softly fades away as the speaker shifts focus, perhaps pointing out the way the weak daylight catches dust motes swirling in the air. You find yourself listening intently to these small threads of shared experience. Each story, however brief, serves to confirm the interconnectedness of your lives. The gossip is merely news of who sows what crop, or which child might be getting married next season. The foundation myths of a passing community. Sometimes, you simply watch people interacting with their surroundings during these interludes. A man might carefully examining a soapstone wall for loose grit under his fingernails. Another might take the time to braiding simple strands of hair using an item found on the ground, a piece of rough twine or dried grass. These moments of stillness, punctuated by gentle talk, deepen your appreciation for human routine. Life here unfolds slowly, meticulously following seasonal and daily cycles that have remained largely unchanged across centuries. As the chatting continues, a palpable sense of calm settles over the corner. The urgency associated with the start of the day, the rush to gather water, the careful stacking of goods, has completely dissipated. You feel a profound release within your shoulders, a physical slackening that has nothing to do with muscle fatigue and everything to do with the quiet permission granted by this pause. You notice the light shifting again. The sun is now gaining strength, filtering through the steam-stained window panes not as a weak dawn wash, but as a more definite source of illumination. This slightly brighter light makes the dust motes more visible, giving them a gentle, golden sparkle that seems entirely transient and fragile. It reminds you that even this tranquil pause is temporary. The full day awaits. The talk eventually begins to thin out. People are becoming more aware that their time in the baths, though restorative, must give way to other commitments. The chores waiting at home, the fields needing attention, the midday meal drawing close. The murmuring gives way to a quiet sorting out of personal items and preparation for departure. As you finally move away from the corner, brushing past another pair exchanging silent waves, you feel the accumulated weariness lifting slightly, replaced by a gentle, enduring tiredness, the good kind that comes after deep rest. You carry with you not just clean skin, but the residue of shared human warmth, the subtle rhythm of overheard stories, the quiet affirmation of belonging to this specific corner of the world. The day has been gently recalibrated, and the memory of this calm conversation will settle over your thoughts long after you leave the stone walls behind. You leave the slightly humid warmth of the bathhouse and step out, feeling the air settle immediately against your skin. The sensation is a gentle coolness that contrasts sharply with the heat you have just known. You are wrapped in a rough, heavy linen cloth, smelling faintly of lye soap, warm stone, and damp village air. This coarse fabric feels unfamiliar against skin accustomed to the silky water. It speaks of simple necessity. Slowly, methodically, you begin to walk along the passage that skirts the back edge of the bathhouse complex. The morning sunlight is not harsh yet, but rather diffuse, filtered through a layer of atmospheric dust and moisture, bathing everything in a pale, gentle gold. This light catches the wet flagstones where water has been tracked out by previous bathers, giving them a momentary gleam. You notice the edges of your own footsteps on the paving stones, a slight squelch accompanying each step, reminding you that even this moment of rest leaves physical trace upon the earth. Look down at the stone beneath your feet. It is uneven, worn smooth in places by the constant passage of countless sandals and bare soles over generations. The grit mixed into the mortar between the flagstones tells a story of slow decay and persistent human traffic. You pass close to a stack of kindling piled against the outer wall. The wood smells sharply of dry sap and sun-baked resins, an aroma that mingles with the fainter, earthy scent emanating from a nearby compost heap. Take a quiet moment just to breathe in this mixed air. It is a complex tapestry: soap, smoke, wet stone, drying herbs, and baked wood, the unique signature of a busy medieval morning. Your walk feels less like travel and more like a gentle unfolding, an outward drift that allows you to process the state of your body and mind. The chill of the morning air begins to lift the fine hairs on your arms and neck, a subtle physical signal of transition. You instinctively pull the linen wrap closer around your shoulders for comfort. Ahead of you, the narrow path opens slightly, revealing glimpses into the life continuing in the village. You watch an old woman sweeping dust motes from her doorway with a stiff-backed broom. She moves with practiced economy, knowing exactly how much effort is needed for that particular spot. Her movements are entirely integrated into the rhythm of her routine, mirroring your own slow pace now. The sunlight strengthens slightly, and you can see patterns of shadow being cast by the eaves of the neighboring homes, sharp rectangles defining places of shade against expanses of dazzling stone. You realize how much you have noticed today through these small observational details. The precise angle at which a tile roof catches the sun, the resilience of the weeds pushing up between packed earth and paving, the way steam still drifts from an open vent near a baker's shop, carrying that unmistakable yeasty promise. This attention to detail is grounding. It anchors you not in an event, but in a continuous flow of existence. Your passage takes you past small stalls where goods are drying, bundles of lavender tied with twine, loaves of bread cooling on woven mats, and earthenware pitchers beaded with residual dampness. The sounds surrounding you are gentle murmurs, the occasional clatter of metal against stone as someone loads a cart, the soft, rhythmic shush of another person's feet passing nearby, the low murmur of voices already beginning to gather in the market square further on. You do not hurry toward them, instead allowing yourself to absorb the sounds, letting them wash over you like the sound of water dripping from an awning during a light shower. Your body feels lighter than when you entered the bathhouse. The warmth has done more than just cleanse. It has recalibrated something within your physical self. As you continue along this semi-private path, taking deep breaths that carry the scent of awakening day, you reflect on the sheer necessity of these routines. Life is built upon predictable patterns. The dawn call to water, the cleansing ritual in the steam, the cool air embrace afterward. These rituals are not luxury. They are necessary pauses, marked moments where time slows enough for one to reset. The linen wrap becomes less of a burden and more of a comforting shell as you walk. You notice that the villagers have begun to fully stir now. Children occasionally call out greetings, their voices high and bright in the strengthening morning air. A man carrying 2 woven baskets crosses your path from the opposite direction. He does not acknowledge you directly, but his steady gait and the slight sway of the heavy loads give a feeling of sturdy continuity. You continue forward, finding yourself observing the architecture, the way thick stone walls stand against the fleeting softness of the morning light. The deep window reveals showing layers of inner life unseen by strangers. This slow walk is itself a form of mediation. Each patterned brick, every worn step, every lingering smell pulls you further into the moment, making the passage feel profound rather than simple. By the time you reach a small crossroads that marks your proximity to the center of town, the light is brighter still, no longer pale gold but turning toward a clearer yellow. You find yourself pausing by the corner where 2 main paths intersect. Here, the activity increases gently. A vendor setting up his stall, arranging colorful root vegetables, another passing merchant polishing his brass tools in the emerging sunlight. The air now carries a more decisive energy, the smell of trade mixing with the residual dampness. But even within this bustle, there is no sense of frantic rush. Everything maintains a steady, unhurried rhythm, dictated by the sun's pace and the deep habits of centuries. You take another deep breath, smelling the convergence of all these smells. The freshness of dawn mingling with the savory promise of wood smoke and market commerce. The simple act of drying off has served to reconnect you to the pulse of the living town, making your renewed sense of self feel aligned perfectly with the slow, rhythmic awakening of the community around you. You return to the quiet enclosure of your home, leaving the brisk daylight and residual sense of the bathhouse air behind you. The world has settled into the hushed, deep hum of midday, a slowing down after the morning's necessary routines. You move slowly through the threshold, letting the subtle change in light and temperature guide your pace. Inside, the air is markedly different from the bustling paths outside. It carries a layered scent that speaks of banked wood smoke and settled comfort, mixed faintly with the yeasty promise of baking bread. The centerpiece of this stillness is the meal waiting for you. It is nothing grand, yet in its simplicity lies profound meaning. You settle at a simple wooden table, noticing the grain under your fingertips, the years of hands touching and polishing that have smoothed out the rough edges of the wood. Before you are modest portions, thick slices of dark, rustic bread, perhaps some salted vegetables or a bowl of stew left over from yesterday's preparation. You begin by arranging the meal. The scent hits you first, a comforting blend where the sharpness of fresh yeast crust mingles with the deep, earthy smell of the wood-fired oven and the faint metallic tang of salt. You pick up a piece of bread, turning it over in your palm. The crust is hard, yielding slightly at the edges, suggesting hours of slow baking in hot brick. You note how uneven the slices are, a testament to human effort rather than mechanical precision. The act of eating itself becomes unhurried. You take a bite, chewing slowly, allowing the textures and tastes to register fully on your tongue. The bread is dense, satisfyingly heavy, giving way with a soft crunch that contrasts with the deep moisture of the stew beside it. Each chew is an observation, noticing how the salt catches the light momentarily, or how the steam rising from the stew briefly obscures the pattern woven into the rush mat beneath your feet. You do not eat quickly to get it over with. You allow the simple act to become a measured rhythm, a counterpoint to the quickening pace of the outside world. You watch the crumbs accumulating on the wooden surface, little scattered remnants that speak of sustenance found at this very place. This focus grounds you in the present moment. After finishing your bowl and leaving only small traces of staining crusts on the plate, a quiet satisfaction settles over you. The intensity of the morning ritual, the scrubbing, the heat, the necessary socializing, has been replaced by a deep sense of physical refueling. You reach out and brush away a stray piece of dried herb that has fallen near your elbow, finding another small item to observe. You sit back, hands resting gently in your lap, and allow your gaze to wander around the immediate space. The walls are warm with shadow, catching streaks of pale sunlight that stream through the narrow window opening. You notice how the dust motes dance slowly in these shafts of light, minute particles suspended in time, moving only with the slightest current of air. This moment is for reflection. It is not a dramatic pondering of great life questions, but a quiet examination of necessity. You think about the rhythms that bind your community together, the precise timing of preparing water skins before dawn, the communal need for the hot steam of the bathhouse, and now this simple gathering of bread and earth-flavored food. Each action serves to reset you, pulling the tension out of muscles that have been holding their stiffness since the previous day. The comfort you feel is rooted in predictability. It is knowing that when the sun reaches its zenith, there will be sustenance, followed by a moment of stillness before the work resumes. This quiet routine functions as an invisible safety net for your spirit. You watch the way the light subtly shifts, deepening the shadows against the corners of the room. The wood smoke smell remains faintly present, mingling now with the cleaner, warmer scent of linen sheets and settled dust. You allow your breath to become slow and deep, mirroring the stillness of the midday sun. The passing hours feel expansive, stretching out before you in a soft, continuous stream. You realize that this quiet period is as essential to your life as the wash itself. It is when the body and mind synchronize with the gentle pace of nature, finding replenishment not through grand events, but through modest continuation. You observe the texture of the rough woolen blanket draped over a nearby chair, noting its weave, the little gaps and knots in the fibers that speak of time and patience. Everything around you suggests endurance. You eventually rise from your seat without hurry. Your limbs feel pleasantly weighted, cooled slightly by the quiet air after the steam and warmth. You walk toward the window opening, not to see anything in particular, but simply to experience the act of moving through space while carrying this internal sense of deep calm. The sun is high now, casting defined squares of light onto the dirt floor outside, marking the passage of time with clean geometric lines. This gentle pause solidifies your understanding of what it means to be part of a life governed by these dependable, quiet cycles. After the richness of your midday meal, a gentle need for stillness settles over you. The sun has climbed high enough to banish the sharpest edges of shadow from the stone floors, but the afternoon air retains that lingering coolness that suggests rest is necessary. You rise slowly from the simple wooden bench where you ate, feeling the smooth, cool wood beneath your bare feet. There is no rush to the next task. Life in the village moves at a regulated pace dictated by heat and light. This remaining time feels suspended, a mandated stillness before the day must shift toward its evening conclusion. You find yourself near the small workspace area, where other residents have begun their own quiet pursuits, the steady rhythm of domestic preparation that defines this kind of ancient routine. You approach the pile of baskets woven from river reeds, and there is work awaiting your attention, drying herbs. The air here carries a specific blend of scent, an earthy, slightly medicinal bouquet. It combines the ghost of wood smoke clinging to your clothes with the sharper, more vegetal aroma of freshly cut greenery. These fragrant bundles are drying in shallow woven trays placed on raised wooden racks. You observe them closely. Some leaves are bright green, holding their life and dampness from the dawn mist, while others have already begun the process of turning into shades of muted gray-green or ochre brown. This subtle transition marks their readiness for preservation, a silent lesson in natural cycles. You kneel down near the largest tray, gently examining the bounty laid out before you. Your fingers brush against the dried stalks of lavender, noticing how delicate they are, almost brittle, yet retaining a faint, sweet perfume that seems to bloom only when warmed by the diffused sunlight. You pick up a handful of thyme, its tiny leaves compacted together, and observe the pattern formed by their rough texture, contrasted with the smoothness of the woven mat beneath them. The heat rising off the exposed stone nearby warms your knees slightly as you sit, anchoring you to this spot of quiet production. There is no single grand purpose to this gathering of dried plants. Each herb serves a specific function, some for medicinal poultices, others for teas and soothing washes, still others simply for their deeply grounding scent. Handling them requires an innate patience, a slowing down that forces your mind to match the steady tempo of manual care. You begin the methodical task of separating and sorting. Some stems are too brittle and must be discarded. Some bunches need gentle straightening before they can be tied into small, uniform packets destined for drying in cool, dark places. This act becomes profoundly meditative. Your breath deepens naturally, synchronized with the repetitive movements of bending, grasping, and grouping. It is a physical rhythm that guides thought away from abstract worries and toward the immediate, tangible reality of the plant matter under your hands. You reach for several sprigs of wild mint, their green surprisingly vibrant even in their drying state. You notice how the undersides of some leaves have a slightly velvety texture, absorbing the diffused light differently than the waxy tops. As you bundle them, you think about the life that these plants once held, the damp earth they grew from, the nourishing rain, the patient sun. That entire cycle, from seed to peak growth to dry utility, seems encoded within this small pile of sorted herbs. It is a profound echo of existence itself. Occasionally, you rise up just to stretch your back and feel the full press of the afternoon air against your skin. The stone wall behind you feels cool and slightly rough to the touch, contrasting with the warmth radiating from the exposed drying rack. You glance around at the other workers nearby, the gentle movements of another pair of hands sorting dried roots, the quiet scraping sound as someone grinds something small in a mortar. These neighboring tasks are not demanding. They are sustained acts of care that keep the community's necessary rhythm turning without fanfare or interruption. The task settles into its own deep comfort, an enforced lull in the day's demands. You find yourself sorting by type, creating separate little piles. Lavender for scent, rosemary for memory and strength, chamomile for quietude. Each pile represents a corner of knowledge, a piece of tradition passed down through generations who understood how to treat the bounty that sprung from the local ground. Handling these dry materials requires an appreciation not just for their current form, but for the fullness of their potential when used, as medicine, as incense, or simply steeped into a calming draught. As the afternoon light continues its slow arc across the sky, shifting the quality of illumination on the drying trays, you realize that this period of work is less about sheer productivity and more about sustained presence. It asks you to anchor yourself in small details, the subtle shift in color from pale green to dusty brown, the fine dust that occasionally lifts when a stack of roots is moved, the faint, musky scent of dried earth clinging to your fingertips. This simple process of sorting and bundling becomes an unintentional, quiet ritual. It serves as a grounding counterpoint to the powerful, immersive sensory experience of the bathhouse earlier in the day. While the bath cleansed your body and slowed your perception of time by dissolving boundary lines between sensation, this herb drying anchors you back into the solid passage of days. You are tending not just plants, but the continuity of life itself, the predictable needs for comfort, healing, and sustained living within the small circumference of your community. You pause, resting your forearms on a woven mat, drawing a slow breath that pulls in the mingled aromas. Dried mint mixed with dry thyme, capped by the clean, fresh smell of sun-warmed stone. The silence is not empty. It is thick with the sound of soft scraping tools and the almost imperceptible rustle of leaves being moved. It is the accumulated quietude of many small acts performed together, a deep humming undercurrent that underlies the village's daily survival. You feel how restful this kind of simple utility is, observing the slow, deliberate pace required to respect both the material and the moment itself. Your focus remains entirely on the hands before you, the methodical separation, the respectful bundling, allowing your thoughts to settle into a calm, deep pool, mirroring the steady flow of the afternoon light. The afternoon has settled into a deep, golden hush. The work with the herbs is finished, leaving you feeling pleasantly tired, anchored by the rhythm of repetition and natural cycle. You no longer need to be moving. Your body naturally drifts toward a place where the last rays of sunlight can draw out the day's final warmth. This gathering point is simply near an open window or perhaps a simple bench in the courtyard, facing the direction where the great arc of the sun must inevitably slide toward the horizon. You settle down, allowing your limbs to feel heavy and soft. The coolness of the stone beneath you offers a welcome contrast to the warmth radiating from your skin. You watch the air through the panes or across the rough-hewn courtyard floor. Everything slows its breathing as the day approaches its inevitable close. This moment is less about looking at something distant and more about noticing how light itself changes quality right before it vanishes. The sun, already angled low in the late afternoon sky, seems to spread out rather than shine directly. It catches the dust motes suspended in the air, making them glow with a faint, dusty amber light. You notice that even the familiar details of your surroundings, the pitted surface of the stone wall, the chipped paint on the wooden windowsill, the stacked firewood near the gate, are momentarily transformed by this specific angle of light. They take on a depth and richness they possess only when illuminated at the edges. You shift slightly, adjusting your position until you feel most comfortably rooted in the moment. You begin to notice the colors settling into the air. The harsh midday brilliance has softened dramatically. There are tones now that were invisible hours ago, deep mauves mixing with soft golds, the shadowed crevices of the old building walls holding a distinct blue-gray. The scent profile of the area shifts, too. It is no longer just the potent medicinal sharpness of fresh herbs mixed with wood smoke. Now, there is a softening overlay, the faint, sweet smell of dust mingling with damp earth that has cooled from the sun's heat. Perhaps a distant cooking fire, or simply the scent of the stone absorbing the last warmth. These mingled smells are what make up the true nature of the late day. You lift your gaze higher, toward the sky. The colors here are subtle and profound. You observe how the vivid blue overhead begins to soften at the horizon line, graduating smoothly through shades of pale peach and diluted violet. It is a visible transition, a gradual giving way from bright clarity to gentle shadow. This steady descent of color feels like a quiet emptying out, the day's energy gently being recalled. You think about time passing this way, slowly, invisibly, yet marked by the magnificent spectacle of the changing light. It is not a dramatic rush, but an almost geological process, witnessed over minutes. This rhythm teaches you patience. You sit still, allowing your thoughts to follow the slow, graceful curve of the fading sunlight. Nearby, life continues its steady drift toward rest. A dog might wander past, or perhaps a child will appear, chasing dust kicked up by passing feet, their laughter muffled by the growing quietude. These small sounds become integrated into the background hum, neither disrupting nor dominating the profound hush. They simply confirm that the rhythm of life moves onward, even as the great light begins its slow retreat. You watch a single shadow stretching out across the courtyard stone. It is long and deep, an exaggerated silhouette cast by an unseen object, a pile of kindling, perhaps, or a corner column. As the minutes tick by, that shadow itself seems to shrink, gathering back toward its source, losing its crisp edges into the deeper gloom. This slow recession feels profoundly peaceful. The quiet is palpable. It settles around your shoulders like a comforting shawl. It is not an empty silence, but one richly textured with memory and anticipation. The anticipation of the night's eventual deep stillness, but also containing the residual warmth of the day's labors. You draw a slow breath, taking in the cool, fading air mixed with the lingering scent of soap residue from your earlier bath and the dryness of the medicinal herbs you worked with. These elements define this peaceful late afternoon hour. You feel connected to the ebb and flow of the light, understanding it as a mirror for deeper rhythms, the cycle of activity and rest, of wakefulness and dream. You settle further into the stone, allowing your awareness to soften alongside the receding gold. The world around you is preparing for quietude, drawing inward, mirroring the necessary internal stillness that precedes sleep, or perhaps merely deep contemplation. This gentle pause, suspended between day's work and night's darkness, is a profound gift of time, holding you safely within its soft embrace. You let your gaze wander back over the patterns on the ground, the moss growing in the perpetual dampness near the well, the way the stones have settled unevenly across centuries. These small details speak of endurance, of life continuing regardless of passing moments of intense light or deep shadow. You feel a quiet gratitude for these rhythms, the reliable return of the sun, and the steady pace of your community's days. The day's edges are softening now, drawing inward with the deep quiet of evening. You find yourself settled near the central hearth, not close enough to feel the immediate rush of heat, but near enough that its steady, comforting breath washes over you. The fire has burned down from roaring brightness into a controlled, mesmerizing glow. It is a banked warmth, radiating out and sketching golden patterns upon the rough-hewn stone walls surrounding the communal space. You watch the embers breathe, a slow pulsing of deep red turning to orange, followed by settling back into ash. The residual heat carries up faint, sweet smells, the lingering smoke of pine wood mixed with the more subtle, earthy scents of spent fuel, and perhaps a touch of burnt herbs from earlier in the day. Settling down feels less like finding comfort and more like sinking into a deep sigh of completion. You notice how the light behaves here, completely unlike the bright, directional beams of midday. The firelight is soft, mutable, and deeply forgiving. It does not illuminate sharply. Rather, it wraps itself around corners and objects, highlighting textures that might otherwise be lost in shadow. You can see the individual grains of dust suspended lazily in the air currents rising from the hearth, tiny, slow-motion dancers caught between the embers and your steady gaze. This specific shade of glowing orange on the deepening twilight blue outside seems to shift within the glow itself. The conversation around you is low, pitched at a level that requires only slight attention, never demanding it. It is woven into the background like smoke threading through air. People sit in comfortable proximity, close enough that shared breath and murmurs create a gentle sound cushion. Sometimes, a rhythmic scraping of a pot being moved, or the soft crunch of cooling ash underfoot, breaks the murmur, and you register these sounds without needing to pay them special mind. You find yourself observing the faces nearby. In this contained light, lines deepen, the fine creases around an elder's eyes that speak of many years, the thoughtful furrow between a young mother's brows. There is no drama in their stillness, only the accumulated weight and ease of shared habitation. These are the subtle maps drawn by time and routine. The storytelling, when it occurs, moves slowly. It is not delivered as performance for an audience, but as a quiet sharing of continuity, a remembering aloud of something that happened last season, or a narrative about how things have changed on the edge of the village over many decades. You follow the stream of memory with your eyes, absorbing the cadence and the rhythm of the recounted life. The tales are not about grand adventures. They are anchored in the practical realities of farming, of seasons changing, of water levels rising or falling, of harvests being brought in, the slow turning wheel of existence. Your focus drifts from the narratives to the hearth itself. The fire is a continuous point of meditation. Observing it brings with it a quiet understanding of transformation, that everything here, even this robust pile of wood waiting for its fate, must eventually yield to ash and breathable air. You trace patterns in the cooling stone where your feet rest. The surface is slightly uneven, worn by centuries of similar evening rituals. People gathering, stories being told, heat radiating out like a gentle promise. The deep warmth emanating from the hearth performs an intimate kind of physical therapy. It seems to settle into your bones, unclenching muscles you had not realized were holding tension throughout the day's gentle movements. This sensation is profoundly relaxing. It is a full-body acceptance of rest. You draw a slow, measured breath, letting it expand in your chest and travel out through your mouth, carrying away the last vestiges of the day's minor preoccupations. Think about this hearth as more than just fuel burning down. It is the center point where time slows and solidifies into shared experience. When the sun has set completely, when the chill of the night begins to creep into the cracks between the stones, the hearth serves as the vital heart, maintaining a necessary temperature. For the body, yes, but more fundamentally, for the spirit. It is here that memories are exchanged, histories are passed on, and simple companionship feels like something profound. The faint scent of residual smoke begins to intermingle with the scents of soap and rinse water, creating a complex bouquet unique to this evening ritual. It is the smell of cleanliness merging with the comforting presence of hearth smoke. This layered aroma acts as a subtle curtain, separating the intense activity of the day from the necessary quietude of the coming night. You feel your own rhythm adjusting to the slow cadence of the gathering. The urge to hurry or plan diminishes. You become acutely aware only of the immediate surroundings. The gentle crackle that emerges from a nearby log, the soft thump as someone settles back into their seat, the deep resonance of the fire against the surrounding quietness. It is an exercise in perfect presence. The glow continues its work, painting everything in hues of amber and gold, a light that speaks less of brightness and more of settled permanence. You absorb this sense of durable continuation. The community breathes together with the steady flicker of the embers. There is a deep satisfaction in knowing that this cycle, the day's labor, the midday cleansing, the evening warmth, is dependable. It anchors the life lived within these stone walls, providing a necessary rhythm against the unpredictable sweep of the outside world. The conversation softens even further now, dissolving into mere sounds. Soft chuckles, murmurs punctuated by contented sighs. You let your gaze drift back to the fire. The embers glow patiently, holding their heat until the very last moment, a gentle promise kept under the watch of the encroaching darkness. The air in your small dwelling has cooled since the warmth of the communal baths. You are preparing for the final rinse, a wash that feels less about physical cleanliness and more about shedding the accumulated dust of hours past. The water you draw is noticeably cooler now than the steam bath water had been. It carries with it the faint scent of the outer village, a mix of damp earth stirred up during the day's activity, and the cool, smoky promise of nightfall gathering outside your window pane. You gather yourself near the wash basin set into the stone counter. The basin itself feels solid under your hands, worn by generations of similar rituals. Running your fingers over its rim, you notice the smooth, dark patina where the water has splashed countless times. It holds the coolness like a deep promise of quietude. There is no haste in this moment. Every movement seems measured, dictated by the deepening dusk that colors the small patches of light filtering through oiled linen window panes. You fill a small scoop from the bucket, drawing up the cool water slowly. The sound of it hitting the stone base is muted, soft, a gentle drip that seems to mark the passage toward slumber. As you pour this water over your wrists and hands, paying attention only to the coolness spreading across your skin, you feel the slight contrast between the warmth stored in your body and the crispness of the falling liquid. This transition feels particularly important tonight. It is a deliberate unwrapping from the day's obligations. You lean into the basin, adopting a pose that allows the water to wash over your shoulders first. The cool sensation travels up your arms, making you draw a soft breath in. You feel the tension that has coiled itself within your muscles throughout the day, the stiffness of walking, the sitting, the quiet attention given during meals and chores. This washing is not scrubbing away dirt. It is rinsing away the residue of mental effort. The scent in the room changes slightly as you wash. It blends with the last vestiges of soap and rosemary from earlier, mixing now with a cleaner smell. The faint, earthy perfume of cool night air entering through a small gap in the wooden shutter. This combination of smells, the medicinal freshness mingling with the damp earthiness, is highly restorative to your senses. You use a soft piece of woven linen cloth, not scrubbing harshly, but gently guiding it over your arms and neck. You observe the way the water runs down the stone drain beneath the basin, taking away the slight film of dust that clings to everything in this old house. There is a quiet satisfaction in watching the day's particles disappear into the depths of the plumbing, a visible shedding of accumulated small moments. As you wash your face, splashing cool water onto your temples and cheeks, the light seems softer, diffused by the approaching night. You notice how the shadows are growing longer within the corners of the room, emphasizing the rough-hewn textures of the wood beams overhead. This deepening contrast between illuminated surfaces and soft shadow provides a calming rhythm to your movements. This final washing ritual serves as an unofficial closing ceremony for the day. It is your personal boundary marker between the active self that moved through the village and the reflective self preparing for sleep. Each gentle swipe of the cloth over your skin feels like placing a small, protective barrier around yourself against the incoming night. The cool water helps to calm your internal temperature, which often mirrors the cooling air outside. You allow your breathing to deepen, making it slow and steady, syncing your breaths with the rhythmic dripping from the wash basin faucet when you finish rinsing. The subtle sound becomes a comforting metronome for your mind. You pause, resting your forearms on the cool stone edge of the basin, feeling the coolness seep into your bones, which is a profoundly grounding sensation. You realize that many days are spent moving forward, from one task to the next, from one person to another. But this moment demands stillness. It requires the simple act of noticing how clean, and therefore potentially empty, you feel right now. A momentary glance out the window confirms the deepening twilight. The colors outside have deepened into shades of indigo and slate gray, suggesting that the village itself is slowing its pulse, settling down to conserve energy for the hours of darkness. You are a small part of that settling, preparing your own vessel for rest. The act reminds you of how deeply physical preparation relates to mental peace. Just as one cannot simply stop rushing through tasks and expect clarity, the mind requires this kind of deliberate reset, this washing away of superficial residue to allow deep thought to surface unhindered. After rinsing the basin until it is nearly dry, you finally feel settled. The slight chill emanating from your skin now feels comforting rather than cold. You use a clean linen towel, not rubbing but patting gently, allowing the moisture to evaporate naturally in the cool air. The texture of the cloth against your skin is soft yet absorbent, completing the careful circuit of care that defines this routine. You gather your simple washing vessels and place them quietly near the corner, their presence now merely functional objects waiting for the morning light again. The last remnants of the day's small routines are folded away with the linens, preparing you to inhabit only the night. You feel a profound sense of having anchored yourself to this moment of stillness, making the passage from the active life back into private solitude seamless and restful. This quiet completion feels as vital to your well-being as any morning meal or afternoon chore. You settle back into the mattress, the rough weave of the wool blanket feeling a welcome contrast to the cool stone floorboards beneath. The day's wash has settled from your skin, leaving only the gentle residue of lavender soap and damp air. You adjust slightly, finding the familiar curve of the pillow against your cheek. It is late, the kind of dark that seems impossibly thick, not merely the absence of light, but a palpable presence. Slowly, you shift your focus toward the small window opening in the far wall. The pane of glass, uneven and imperfect by modern standards, reflects a deep velvet indigo. You feel the subtle pressure of the night pressing against this glass, whispering the vastness that lies beyond the village palisade. The scents indoors are muted now, mostly the clean, lingering smell of wood smoke from the banked hearth in the main room, mixed with the fainter ghost scent of your own soap and the earthiness that always clings to damp woolen clothes. You inhale slowly, letting the comforting combination settle deep within your chest. It is a profoundly domesticated scent, the smell of survival and gentle routine. The quiet outside is not silence exactly, but rather a layered suspension of sound. Occasionally, the distant clop of a hoof on packed dirt drifts in, muffled by distance and darkness. Perhaps it is a watchman passing, or simply an animal moving in the outer fields. You do not name the source. You only register the subtle movement against the prevailing calm. You become acutely aware of the scale of the sky visible through that small frame. Here, within the careful geometry of your home, the world shrinks down to manageable proportions. The hearth, the window, the bed. Yet that glass window acts as a portal to something infinite. The darkness outside is utterly pure. It lacks the orange haze and soft electric glow that sometimes pollutes the horizons now in times far away. This deep medieval night reveals stars with an impossible clarity. They do not twinkle. They burn with a steady, resolute brilliance, fixed points of cold fire across unimaginable distances. You lie motionless for a long time, simply observing the pattern of the constellations shifting above the silent village rooftops. You recognize patterns that your mind has gathered over years. The curve of the dipper, the faint scattering that marks Cassiopeia. These groups of stars were seen by the same hands that saw yours centuries ago, and those hands observed vastly different worlds, different kings, different harvests, different needs. The light from these ancient stellar bodies is utterly indifferent to your small existence. It simply exists, traveling across gulfs of time and void until it finally washes over your sleeping corner. This vast, cold indifference has a strangely comforting quality. You feel incredibly small against the backdrop of this immense sky, yet at the same time, you are deeply connected to everything that shines. The realization settles gently. The life lived within these thick stone walls, with its meticulous routines. The early rising, the careful gathering of herbs, the deep warmth of the shared bathhouse space, is itself a small, fragile mechanism designed to keep your spirit grounded. It is a way of declaring, through daily ritual, that you belong here, right now. You trace patterns on the ceiling with your mind's eye, following the slow passage of time marked by these heavenly lights. The rhythm of life in this village has always been subservient to the turning of the day and the pull of the tides visible from the stars. The human drama is minor when set against the eternal backdrop of celestial mechanics. The temperature in your room remains steady, a balance between the coolness seeping up through the stone walls and the lingering residual heat held within the thick timbers overhead. You become aware of the slow, measured rhythm of your own breathing, a quiet, reliable mechanism that marks your passage through time. Each breath is both an intake from the earth below and an expulsion towards the high, cold void above. You consider the tremendous gulf between the comforting solidity of your bed and the emptiness outside. The stars seem to remind you that even routine things, like the fading embers in the hearth or the quiet passage of a cartwheel on cobblestone, are temporary phenomena. They are beautiful precisely because they pass. This sense of deep, temporal perspective calms any lingering anxieties. If the stones have withstood millennia, and the stars continue their cold dance regardless of human folly, then your simple life must also find its necessary rhythm. The cyclical nature of existence washes over you, rising with the smoke-filled dawn, soaking in the steam, navigating the daylight, returning for the hearth glow, and finally being enveloped by this immense, glittering darkness. You allow your awareness to soften further, sinking into the weight of the mattress, accepting the deep peace that comes from being observed by the cosmos. The village is sleeping soundly, wrapped in its protective routine, held safe beneath the uninterrupted shimmer of countless distant flames. The vastness outside does not demand attention. It merely illuminates. It offers a profound and humbling sense of scale, allowing you to feel deeply rooted within your small patch of earth while simultaneously being connected to everything beyond visible time. You drift towards sleep, wrapped in the sense